Beer me blazer. Yeah. For sure. We'll jump to the next guy here. You got Allen Robinson from the Chicago Bears. Now, if you listen to this podcast, you know I'm like the residential Allen Robinson hater. I would just always, throw shade at him all the time. But I'm also a numbers guy. So, I say it all the time. Men lie, women lie, numbers don't lie. And looking at the numbers, it's pretty impressive. I think 154 targets. I think it was third most, right?
Yeah, he was
up there.
I think on targets per game, he was like
underrated.
Second or third.
Yeah. So, I mean, looking at the numbers, I'm a kind of guy where I like to find consistent guys each and every week. Like, is this guy going to get me, 10, 12 plus points as a floor each and every single week? And it was just like looking at his numbers, especially in PPR, and like his floor was just consistent across the board each and every single week. So, I mean, I think, Anthony, you had him in at 12 or 11?
Yeah, it was just like literally you kind of pretty much said why he was there. I mean, 150 targets week in and week out. I mean, if you're seeing 150 targets, you're pretty much averaging 9, 10 a game. You catch even half those, you're 4 or 5, catches a game, and that's, like you said, safe floor. He's shown some big touchdown upside in the past, 7 last year. So it's just like a volume thing where it's like, all right, like this motherfucker's just like all they have, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Okay.
Anywhere's number 12.
There you go.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I just look at it as like, okay, who's throwing on the ball? Mitch Trubisky. For sure, I'm
Nick
good.
Foles, bud.
Yeah, I know it's Nick. I know it's going to be probably Nick Foles this year, but I mean, they did trade everything and anything to get Mitch Trubisky, so they still have to kind of play that whole.
Yeah.
But I mean, even the guy, I think it was a GM that wanted Mitch Trubisky. I think he doesn't anymore.
Clearly.
But I'm saying, yeah. So what I look at the quarterbacks, and even with Nick Foles, do you think Nick Foles is the real deal? Do you think he's Big Dick Nick, or do you think that? Like, do you think he could be? Do you think he's that much of an improvement off of Mitch Trubisky?
It's just tricky because
I think he is, but not by much.
He's just a better quarterback.
Yeah, I don't think people realize this. There was a brief stint where Nick Foles was the backup quarterback in Kansas City, and when Matt Nagy was there as the offensive coordinator. So there's obviously something that Matt Nagy knows or has seen in Nick Foles that made him want to go out and get him. He's gonna know the offense. He knows what to expect and whatnot. So. Can we see the changing of the guard, halfway through the year? That's a possibility, and that kind of worries me. Like, I mean, even as bad as Trubisky is, or he has his moments up and down, but it's like Allen Robinson still saw 154 targets. I mean, like
that's
I said, he was
wild.
still consistent, even with how poor of Trubisky was at times. I'm just worried about if they start off rocky, if they start off 2-4, 3-5, something like that. Do they switch over to Nick Foles? Isn't Matt Nagy worried about like I might lose my job, so I got to throw Nick Foles to try to save my job? And then what is the difference between Trubisky throwing the ball compared to Foles? Does Foles favor the slot guy? Kind of we were big on D.D. Westbrook last year, and that was because we were thinking like Foles would favor that slot guy. So if Foles steps in, does he kind of lean on Anthony Miller out of the slot a little bit more, or does he stay peppering Allen Robinson with all these targets?
See, I think like when you're making a top 12 rankings, I think you're kind of saying like you want this as your wide receiver 1. You're saying like you're comfortable with that. Like I'm not comfortable having Allen Robinson as my number 1 wide receiver. I would rather draft a running back over him.
For sure.
Feel it.
I agree. I agree 100%.
Yeah, so that's why I don't have him in mind. But
it'd be nice to get him at like
it'd be cool
as
to
your third receiver,
right?
Somehow, because then it's like okay, then my third receiver is going to be better than
That's what happened.
You just go receiver.
I mean, last year he went
Unless
pretty
you play
low.
with everyone who's like a Packers and Lions fan, and they're like, "Fuck Bears." Yeah. Some people are like that. They won't take other teams.
That is the division where that happens too. Is that it's like Packers fans and fucking Lions fans and shit. But
are you worried a little bit of the emergence of Anthony Miller? It's year 3 for him. I mean, we kind of saw it towards the end of the year. He's one of those guys who has been battled injuries for like the majority of his time in the league. So do we see like a jump, in Anthony Miller's game? Maybe he gets a couple more of those targets.
I mean, I'm sure that even 20 more targets for him is good. So if he takes 5 from Robinson, 5 from someone, like that's fine. I'm sure Anthony Miller will carve out a role, but he's their number 1 guy for sure. I liked him also with the Jags too. And then when he went to the Bears, I kind of didn't care for him because last year he wasn't as great. But this year, yeah, like you said, he was one of those. He's not going to lose you a game with his bad game. So we're like Amari when he would get you like a 0 or those like 1. Even Julio will get you like a 2. would really like piss you off. At least with Allen Robinson, his bad games are still, like 7s. In half point PPR, he's not going to hurt you on his bad games. So it's always good to have, some consistency, even when it's, on the lower end of the scoring for him. So.
Another guy, he's in a contract year as well, so
yeah, I have him at
trying to get paid.
Everyone's in a contract.
Yeah, bro, there's hella paid contract year.
I put him
These
at
receivers are. I mean, like I said, if you want to get paid,
15.
you want to secure the bag, you're gonna have to go out there and perform. So I feel like when you know that, especially like, hey, my livelihood, of me making 10, 12, 15 plus million a year is on the
How
line.
will I survive?
You're gonna go out there and you're gonna want to put up some numbers, because you want to get paid. So just a little extra incentive for these receivers to really go out there and perform.